In this Golf Smart Insight, we're going to discuss the shallowing as it relates to supination. So I see frequently that a lot of instructors are really big on the shallowing of the club during transition. Some of the mechanical research to back that up was modeled by Sasho presented with Chris Como in a video a few years ago. So everyone says, hey, you shallow the club and it helps create this passive torque that helps square up the face. And all that is mechanically correct. The problem is I then see some of the same instructors advocating a hold-off release or advocating minimal supination. So what I'm going to show you is that the whole purpose of this shallow move is to allow more supination or greater force with supination, or allow you to supinate early. So if you're teaching someone not to supinate, I can actually make the argument that it doesn't make sense to shallow. You should actually just kind of stay with everything in plane, similar to what we would do in the finesse wedge swing, where we have none of that shallow because we're going to square the face more with in-plane movement, and we're not going to use as much of the supination during the release. So there was a video done a few weeks ago by Michael Finney talking about the components of alpha, and he was talking about the moment of force. And that's really what we're talking about here and what this passive torque is when you when you shallow in transition. And the moment of force is going to allow us to supinate either harder or earlier, depending on how you want to look at it. So I want to explain that moment of force. They've used a couple analogies that I think are pretty good, but just demonstrating with a golf club here, right? If I'm going to pull the handle and apply kind of a linear force that way, this club will want to line up with that force, and basically it will want to move across just like this. So if the center of mass is way down here, then when I pull it, it's going to want to move up towards that lining up basically with the direction that I'm pulling. If I headed up here and I did the same movement, yes, gravity is going to help, but if I was in a vacuum and didn't have gravity, it would still want to move in that direction. So what happens is when I have that shallow movement during transition, now I can start supinating this forearm earlier without having an effect. So basically, as this is shallowing, I can start supinating, and now it starts to move in the direction of supination. If I kept it in a straight, if I didn't allow that arm shallowing, then what'll happen is the second I start supinating, the club is essentially going to move with it. So I am an advocate of supination during the release. I've never seen on 3D a good release that doesn't involve a fair amount of supination. So it makes sense to me that this arm shallowing allows golfers to feel like they start that release sooner. I teach the different methods that I think are common among kind of the great golfers and how they release the club, how they do the shallowing movement, and how they work in transition. But in this video, I just wanted to kind of help you with the thought puzzle of basically if you're advocating this shallow movement during transition, then what happens is when you go normal and when you start getting those things to line up, it's allowing you to supinate earlier and harder, which are good components of a release. So if you're teaching more of a hold-off release, there's no real reason to then shallow during transition. And if you're teaching shallowing during transition, it should be to help support what you're trying to do during the release. Hopefully this helps. If you like the way we break this down, go over to Golf Smart Academy and sign up for a free membership, and you can take a look at a lot of the concept videos, drill videos that we do to help explain these current trends in golf sciences and how you can apply them to your game or the game of your students.